All right, what's up, team? I'm excited to bring this one-page business plan class to you. Uh, I'm Skylar Williamson. As most of you know me, I run a couple of different businesses, but a lot of what I teach came from the military, and then me translating that military decision-making process into business, and then, of course, using models that I've learned in business to just plus it up over time. And this one-page business plan will be a little bit of that. And of course, all of this comes from my book, The Steady Leader. And you can get this model and many more if you were to go to thesteadyleader.com and purchase that book. All right, I want to tell you a quick story. As a brand new lieutenant coming out of West Point, there was a lot of things that they taught us the book answered for. And you're very motivated coming out of West Point to go and be the best officer you can be. And certainly during my time, it was a wartime effort. So we were very very motivated to do the best that we can because we knew that people's lives were at stake, and our execution as leaders meant possibly saving someone's life. And so when we went overseas to Baghdad, one of the things that was my responsibility as an officer in my unit was to deliver these mission patrols. And we would be very thorough in those. And the Army gave and taught me a mission format that was very thorough. And it started with the situation, then moved into the mission and execution, then the support mechanism of the planning, and then the command and control. And I would go through all of that with my soldiers right before we went off on a patrol, because I wanted everyone to be as knowledgeable as I was about not only the terrain, but also just what would the decisions and how would the decisions be made if I were killed in action or wounded, or all of the above. Now, what I would notice when I was delivering these mission operations orders was the soldiers would only write down a couple of things. And, the first couple of times it didn't bother me, but then I just noticed that it was a trend. They only wrote down a few things that I said and then almost zoned out for the rest of the patrol briefing. And so I like any officer would do, I went to my enlisted leaders and said, hey, why do the soldiers only write down a few things? And they told me, hey, sir, that's how we train them. They only need to know those few things and then have an overall understanding of the mission. We appreciate all of those details that you're delivering to us, but they don't matter as much to us as they do to you. We need to know these things. And I thought for a little while on it, and that makes sense. And so I changed the way that I was leading and the way that I was presenting to put everything that they wanted plus graphics on a one-page piece of paper, and I would give that to my soldiers. And then we would go to the terrain board and just talk about how we were going to move throughout the city, where our objective was, how we were going to assault the objective, and all of that. And it was the biggest shift in communicating information to my soldiers that I've ever made in my professional career. They not only appreciated the piece of paper, but they kept it on their pocket so that if they were caught in the combat zone having to make a decision without maybe me or one of the other leaders there, that they would have everything they needed in that pocket in that one piece of paper. Not only that, it gave them graphics. I mean, it gave them so much information. And the point of the story is, there's 2 points. One, as a leader, never be so stuck in process. Just because you were trained a way, just because you were taught a certain way, just because you've been successful up to this point doing things a way, don't ever be unable to learn a new way of doing things if that could make your team more successful. So that would be one. 2, I learned that you've got to keep things simple. The more complex you make something, the harder it's going to be to execute. And so when you can get your mission, or when you can get your project plan all on one piece of paper, it will make things easier to execute, and your team will benefit from that and they'll do better. So that's my motivating story here. And of course, we're talking about business. We're not talking about combat. But I believe that the same is true. If I go to my teammates here in business and I give them a 20-page business plan for a project that they're about to execute, they're going to appreciate that I put all of that work and that effort into it, but they're not going to read all of that. They're going to pull out of it what they need, and that's it. However, if I give them a one-page business plan, not only will they keep it, they'll likely pin it to the wall or they'll keep it on their desk until that project's complete. And so for me, it's about putting effort into something that's actually actionable that they're going to use. All right. I love this definition of leadership, and I like to talk about the definition of leadership before we do any of our presentations, because I think we all have a definition. I love John Maxwell's that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So to lead, you have to have influence. Another way that I love is teaching people how to think so that they can get the things done that they need to get done, and all of that helps you grow your business. So influence and thinking, those are the two things that I love to define leadership with. So if leadership is influence, well, the question is, what does influence require? And I think these three big things are the easiest to comprehend. I mean, obviously, influence is complex, and we can make it as complex as you want. But the first thing is the old adage, people don't care about you unless you show them that you care about them. I think the first thing you got to do is show your people that you love them, that you care about them. The second thing is people that have influence are living their life in such a way that people see them and they want a piece of that. They want their life to be like yours in some way. And it doesn't have to be your whole life. It could be segments of your life, but your life has to be big enough in some way that people actually want to follow you, that you understand something at a higher level than they do, and that they want to follow you to learn more of that from you. Or physically or financially, you're just a step ahead of them, and they want to follow you to get to what you have. I think you got to live a life that people want, and that will give you more influence. And then, of course, the last thing is just be a steady leader. The more steady you are, the more dependable you are, the more trust and safety that your folks will feel with you in your organization, and they're going to follow you more. And I think that is the point of the rest of these slides here, is that we're going to build trust and safety by being steady leaders, specifically around the one-page business plan. So, I think when you're building a plan, this can apply in all three facets of the steady leader. I think you can build a plan to lead yourself, build a plan to lead your team, and build a plan to lead your business and all the projects in between. And this format will help you in all those regards. But first, we always have to start with vision. In order to create a plan, you have to know where you're going. And to me, the definition of vision is, what does it look like in the end when it's done right? So are we doing a project here? Are we doing a mission? I mean, what are we? Are we doing our 1 year plan for the whole year? Whatever it is, you have to have a vision for it. And that vision is going to take you in pursuit of a purpose. And the purpose is, well, why? Why do I get out of bed? What's my purpose in life? Why do I run this business? What's the purpose of this business? If you can answer that question, why, and it be about other people, then you have your purpose. And just remember, purpose and all of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, purpose is the only thing that I believe can be evergreen, that you can say it today and it would be strong enough to last the rest of your life. Your vision and your plan, that's going to change. It's going to change over time. As you receive more information, you'll be able to make more intelligent decisions, and it's going to change. And on the vision piece, we always look to the past to see if anyone has solved something like what we're about to try to solve before. Tony Robbins and all the gurus, they quote the old saying, "We want to stand on the shoulders of giants." These people in business are giants for a reason, because they found a way to run their businesses successfully. Well, why not start with their operating model first and then innovate on top of that? And so when we're creating our vision and we're creating our plan, we always want to look to the past to see if there's any hints or clues or models that we can use to develop a more successful, more predictable outcome in what we're about to accomplish. And I love the way Dan Sullivan talks about time. The more complex the problem, the more time we need to think about it. And so are you a leader setting aside time to think about the vision, to think about your plan? I think that you have to create structured time in your week, in your day, in your month, so that you're continuously thinking not only of what you want the vision to be, not only of what you want the plan to be, but even after you develop those, should I change anything about it? And so that job of thinking that you have, I mean, you have that responsibility as a leader to think often. And then I think that when you have the vision of where you're going, when you set that future target, the plan is what brings you all the way back to today and bridges that gap. It bridges the gap between where you are today and where you're going in the future, which is that vision. The other thing that the plan does is it makes that future vision believable. When you say, hey, we're gonna build a business that looks like this, it has all of these big things, all these people that we're going to lead, all this money that we're going to generate, all of these happy clients that we're going to generate, all of these people we're going to help, all these problems we're going to solve. You've got all of that stuff in the future and it sounds awesome and it's motivating for the moment. But then as that initial motivation wears off, what makes it believable that we're actually going to make it happen is the plan, where you show your team, here's where we are today, and these are the things that we're going to do to get to where we're going in the future. And so that plan from here to today, it is the bridge. And it is what brings most of the motivation to your team to get work done. And then ultimately, your vision is a big piece of what you're going to use to win the hearts and minds of not only your clients, but your team. All right. Your team has to believe in where you're going. The team has to be excited about where you're going. That vision needs to align with the vision that they have for their lives. And that's why in hiring, we always want to make sure that we understand what motivates people and what they want for their life in the end, because we want people to have their best lives while working with us in pursuit of our best lives. When they align, so much momentum is built, because I'm just helping you get what you want. And if you get what you want, I get what I want. And when a team's aligned like that, around a vision, around a purpose, the plan, it falls into place. It becomes very believable and very executable because the people have the motivation to get there. And so we've always got to work on vision, and we've got to have that time thinking before we sit down to develop the plan. And of course, in the book, we talk about the situation paragraph and analyzing the situation before we plan. And that is a part of that vision process too. But today, where I want to spend most of our time is on this thing we call the GPT. It stands for goal, priority, and task. It's also called a 1-3-5, but it is the one-page business plan. And let me just motivate you real quick. I'm a great planner because I bring a bunch of intensity to planning. I treat it as if my life is on the line, because when I was raised as a young officer in the military, immediately my first leadership position was in combat. And so when I planned as if my life was on the line, and I planned as if my team's lives were on the line. And I think, look, I know in business that people's lives aren't on the line, but your business is on the line and your financial life is on the line. And so I would bring that intensity to your planning process and take it seriously. And so I actually want to go to the whiteboard here and just share with you how you would come up with your goal and your priorities and your task, and how to structure it, and then how to use it, how it should be used in your business. Okay. All right. So we have our whiteboard here, and I think right off the bat, the first thing you're going to do is identify your goal. Now, the goal has to be a very specific thing. It's a task and a purpose, and it has a deadline, and it usually has a number, a dollar sign assigned to it. So in business, everything we do is to make money. And for most projects and for most actions that we take and for most plans that we create, the outcome has to be some positive resource, more times than not money. All right. And that it has to be measurable. Your goal has to be measurable. We don't do anything in business without it being measured. Now, once you have the goal, what you would think of next as a leader in your head is what are the top 3 priorities? And they would be in order. Not all 3 can be the top priority. You would start with what is priority number 1? And then you go to the second priority, and you come down here and figure out what the third priority is. And so if we had the resources and we had the time and the bandwidth to work on anything, what we would do is go work on priority 1 in pursuit of our goal. And we would just work on that priority until we accomplished it, and then we would move to priority number 2. But it's always in order. We want to make sure that everything is always in importance order. And then within each priority, we have tasks. All right? And it's going to be task number 1 all the way down to task number 5. Now, you may have 10 tasks, you may have 3 tasks. The number of tasks doesn't matter as much as this being the most important task, all the way down to the least important task. And all of these tasks are to be completed in order to complete the priority here. And so under priority 2, you're going to have task number 1 all the way through task number 5. And then priority number 3, you're going to have task number 1 all the way down to task number 5. And so once you have this structure together, you're going to have a goal, you're going to have 3 priorities in order, and then you're going to have 5 to 10 tasks such that if you accomplish those tasks, you will accomplish the priority in pursuit of your goal. And so if I wrote this really well, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'm going to go work on task number 1 within priority number 1. And I'm going to work that until I dominate it and I cross it off the list. And then I'm going to go to task number 2. And I'm going to work all of that until I complete all the tasks and priority number 1 is completed. Now, more times than not, priority number 2 is going to become the new priority number 1, but it might not. Sometimes you might, in executing, you might determine, hey, actually priority number 3, based on what we learned in accomplishing number 1, priority number 3 is now our new number 1. Now, again, as a leader, you're spending time thinking, you're casting that vision, you're analyzing where we're at today and where we're going to be in the future and where we need to be. And so all along the time while the team is working on these priorities and tasks, you're thinking about, well, what's my 4th priority? And what are the tasks that go down underneath that 4th priority, such that when we accomplish priority number 1, we move everything up, and then more track is put in front of the train, right? We never want to let our team run out of things to do. And so the train is the team, the track is where we're moving, the plan, and as the leader, we got to continue to lay that track out in front of the train in pursuit of our vision and accomplishing that goal that we have in the future. Now, this is how I organize the 1-3-5, and it's never finished. You know, we're always working on this. In knocking out priority number 1, we may determine that, you know what, priority number 2 no longer needs to be done. So we're going to roll priority number 3 up, roll in priority number 4, and then we got priority number 5 in the queue getting ready to go. So it's never complete. We're always building, we're always measuring, we're always learning from the outcomes, and we're continuously making this a more refined product, a more product that we use. And I love the old quote from Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until I punch them in the face. And that's right. Like, we got a plan, but as we're executing, we may figure out that this plan doesn't work as well as we thought it was going to, and we need to change it. So always be willing to change. Your vision may move left and right based on what you're learning. Your purpose is evergreen. Now let me show you. Once you have this all lined up, a couple of other things that you can do. Is I'm going to write an org chart. Now, I've got an org chart here, and at the top, for most business owners like myself, this is where you go. You're at the top. You're in charge of the goal, right? Beneath you, you have your 3 key leaders, and they're in charge of priorities. So you got priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3. And then your key leaders have their teams, and their teams are broken up. and you have someone in charge of this task, this task, this task. So these folks are in charge of the task. Now, here's the thing. You want to have a plan for the team, but you want your team to have their own one-page business plans. So your priority will be this person's goal. Your task will be this person's priorities, and then they will have tasks underneath that. And so what you really want to see is 1-3-5s beneath you all nesting up to an overall goal for the company. Now, their goal is going to be your priority, but it all nests. And that's it. And when you have that, the whole company can move in unison, and you know that these complex problems that at the top of the house you're identifying, as they get down into the organization, they're breaking down into more and more detail, more and more smaller steps that can be executed and executed at a very high level. And so the definition of what this all looks like down here comes to these leaders. You define the problem, you put the resources in place, you give the vision of where we're going, and you give the goal for the company, and then your leaders start to build out their 1-3-5s, their one-page business plans for their teams beneath you. And it all nests up. Everything is aligned all the way back up to the overall goal. And so I just think that this should always be paid attention to, and it should always nest, and we should all be communicating around this one goal in pursuit of this one vision. And when you do this really well, and your team has one-page business plans that are actionable, your ability to accomplish the goal and accomplish it effectively just goes through the roof. And it will pay off big time. And the only other thing that I'll just point out here too is, in the military, we have this concept called the span of control. And so when you use a one-page business plan to run your organization and to develop your team and how you've outlined assets, the number of reports that you have should never be more than 3 to 5 people, right? Because the reason more times than not people become leaders is because they were really good at producing. Whatever that team that they're leading, they were really great at producing. And so we don't want our leaders ever to leave that producer role. We do need them to lead a team, but we don't want them to lead so many individuals that the only thing they do is answer questions all day long and give guidance all day long. We want them to spend some of their time producing and some of their time leading. And so you got to pay attention to that span of control. And when you outline your org chart in a 1-3-5 manner, you can be sure that your team is always obeying that span of control rule. And so don't be a leader that operates without vision. Don't be a leader that operates without a plan. Don't be a leader that creates a plan that's super complex that people actually won't read and use. Create an actionable plan with a clear vision and a clear purpose that not only your team can execute efficiently and well and understand, but you can be a steady leader, because when you communicate, it's not overly complex. It's not easy. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to execute on. Steady companies, steady leaders have executable plans that are simple and that people will carry around with them and use consistently. So I'm grateful for this. This model and many more are in our book. You can go buy the book, thesteadyleader.com, or you can go buy the book at the website, thesteadyleader.com. I hope this has been beneficial for you all, and look forward to talking to you in the next one.